So Ohio State preparing for Luke Fickell, and Jeremy Birmingham from LettermanRow.com joins us now. And Jeremy, I guess it's somewhat fitting that Luke Fickell is going to bring Cincinnati into Columbus on Hall of Fame Day, because while Fickell's not in the Varsity Hall of Fame yet, you got to think at some point in the next 15, 20 years, he's going to have his moment at halftime of an Ohio State game. That's how much he has meant to this team, to this program. If you think about it, a Columbus native, played at Ohio State, coached at Ohio State. I think maybe he's mid-40s, maybe only 5 years of his life he hasn't been in Columbus, so we know how important Ohio State is going to be for Luke Fickell and how much you'd love to get an upset on Saturday.
Yeah, Luke may not be in the Ohio State Hall of Fame, but he is a Buckeye Hall of Famer. Like, this is a guy who loves and grew up eating, sleeping, breathing Ohio State football, and had the opportunity to play here in the 90s, and obviously as soon as he was done playing football, became an assistant coach here under Jim Tressel, and was here up until 2 years ago, and has turned Cincinnati into a pretty darn good program overnight after the dumpster fire that Tommy Tuberville left him there in Cincinnati. So it's one of those games that I think in a normal situation, if this was not Luke Fickell bringing that team into Ohio Stadium on Saturday, that there would be more of a potential for oops moment for the Buckeyes. But I can't imagine a scenario where Ryan Day, understanding how important this game is to Luke Fickell, lets it be unimportant to him. I mean, this is a moment for Ryan Day that would be, and I'm just going to put it out there, catastrophic to lose to Luke Fickell. Like, you could lose to someone. You cannot lose to Luke Fickell.
Well, Earl Bruce famously called the two losses to Indiana in the late 80s darkest day in Ohio State history, one, and darkest day in Ohio history, two. I think it's interesting that Cincinnati, they were one of the teams that really got lost in the shuffle with the conference realignment 4 or 5 years ago. Ohio State brass today said this is not a group of five team. This is a Big Ten type of team. The fact that they're in the American Conference, they really are a Power 5 type program.
Yeah, and they play a very physical brand of football. Luke has done a quick turnaround, as I said, especially on the recruiting trail. They've done a great job getting Ohio players that years ago were going to Michigan State and other schools like that, and they've sort of now become the go-to place along with Kentucky for a lot of those kids that are just right below Ohio State level and have ended up playing big-time college football. And Luke, obviously, if you paid attention to him here, he loves that physical brand of football and wants people to be tough and hit them in the mouth. That's best exemplified by running back Mike Warren, who's obviously a Toledo guy, so everyone around here should know him pretty well. But it's a program that is a Big 12 type team. I mean, this is what they could have been. I mean, there was talk about them going to the Big 12 a few years ago. Maybe they play defense, which they don't do in the Big 12, but maybe that's why they didn't let them in.
Exactly.
But certainly they're a talented group. They are not as athletic as Florida Atlantic on the offensive side of the ball, but defensively they're going to be much more sound, much more aggressive, and a really good matchup for Ohio State and their new offensive line, new quarterback, new offense.
You touched on Michael Warren. He had 2 touchdowns against UCLA last week in Cincinnati's victory, and certainly has the attention of Ohio State. Larry Johnson talking about the fact that he runs great, he's got a great burst, and they really have to get many hats on the ball and group tackle to bring down Michael Warren, because he's not going to be brought down by just one guy.
Yeah, I think the most interesting thing about this entire game on Saturday is how healthy is Mike Warren, because he certainly did get dinged up at the end of the UCLA game on a play that was a fumble that somehow didn't get called a fumble. I'm not sure how, but I don't know the status of him yet. I don't think anyone's really going to know that until Saturday. If he's healthy, that's a totally different game, because he is the Cincinnati offense.
Yeah, late in that fourth quarter, he did go out with the ankle injury, have not really gotten a status update. And Luke Fickell kind of putting a little bit of a blackout on the Bearcats this week media-wise. He doesn't want his players having to be subjected to all the Luke Fickell going back to Columbus talk. So a little bit interesting gamesmanship by Fickell this week with his players.
Well, he knows where the spotlight is going to be, and it's not going to be on his players. And in some way, if you're a good motivator, the best way to get those players to understand that you're not even being talked about is to just don't let them be talked about. So let it be about Luke. Let it be about the return to Ohio Stadium. Let it be about Luke versus Ryan Day, and let his players kind of sneak in under the radar and then attack. And that's Luke Fickell single-handedly destroyed the Oregon program twice. He is a guy that, as a defensive mind, is as good as there is in the country. And I know that he would rather nobody talk about his players. Nobody would rather talk about his scheme. Just focus on Luke walking the sidelines at Ohio Stadium, because that helps him.
Interesting that today we heard from Ohio State that basically everybody admitted, yeah, we went a little vanilla after we went up 28-0. After the game, it wasn't so much we went vanilla as, Florida Atlantic made some adjustments, but there was certainly a concerted effort, and Fickle even referred to this as well, that Ohio State did go vanilla so that they didn't show him everything that the Bearcats could prepare against, that the Buckeyes would have prepared. Because keep in mind, Cincinnati, they played on Thursday, so they've had 2 extra days to prepare for this game.
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason for Ohio State to open up the playbook against Florida Atlantic. Those first 4 touchdowns were as easy as any 4 touchdowns I've ever seen for an Ohio State football team against anybody. So when you get that happening on your base packages and your pretty simple offense, and it's okay to go vanilla when you're up 28-0 on essentially 4 plays. So I think that's a smart decision. I don't know why anyone said on Saturday that it wasn't that. I mean, let's just call a spade a spade. Sometimes those things have to happen, but if you're a Buckeye fan who's complaining about the offense in the second and third quarter, understand that there's a reason for that. Number one, Justin Fields got hit pretty hard a couple times in the first quarter against Florida Atlantic, and I think that made an impression on the Ohio State coaching staff, and they said, whoa, let's not let that keep happening. And then, as we already alluded to, it's about not showing Luke Fickell, who is excellent at game planning and has had 8-9 months to prepare for Ohio State, and in a way, playing UCLA, a guy whose offense in Chip Kelly has sort of molded Ryan Day's offense, gave him almost a run-through, almost a rough draft of what Ohio State could do. So I completely understand why Ohio State would have wanted to dial it down.
I think maybe what was lost in that second quarter lull, the Owls did a much better job in terms of field position. Ohio State was deep in their own end. Of course, you're going to go a bit more conservative. Ohio State didn't have to show Luke Fickell everything, but on the other side of the equation, Cincinnati, they had to do everything to beat UCLA. It was a close game, so Ohio State perhaps has a better understanding what the Bearcats are going to try and do.
Yeah, offensively, like I said, Florida Atlantic, to me, is a much better offense than Cincinnati is going to bring into Ohio Stadium. Defensively is where they're going to be better, but offensively, the Buckeyes are going to need to focus on stopping the run, tackling at the line of scrimmage. You can't let Mike Warren bounce off a guy. That's going to be the big thing. When it comes to what Ohio State saw to Cincinnati, I think that's who they are. That there's no real hiding that. It's who they were last year. It's who they're going to be this year. They're not going to be a team that's throwing the ball all over the field, which generally works to Ohio State's favor. So it'll be interesting. To me, this is all about toughness. It's all about mano-a-mano. And going in there and making sure that if someone's getting punched in the mouth, it's the other guy, not you.
What impressed you the most with Justin Fields against Florida Atlantic? What does he have to work on the most as he gets ready for Cincinnati?
Well, I think the most important thing was that how he bounced up from those hits that he took, because this is a guy who, despite the fact that he was the number 2 ranked player in the country coming out of high school, despite the fact that he was on TV and that QB1 show, and he's a big star, okay, but he hadn't been hit in 2 years, really. He went to Georgia and played sparingly in roles and moments where he wasn't being hit. Hasn't been hit when he was at Georgia. Hasn't been hit in the last year waiting to play here at Ohio State. And that first punch is sometimes a little staggering. And I think that the important thing was that he played, and as I rewatched the game, I thought he played a lot better in the second and third quarter than people wanted to give him credit for. Obviously, the Buckeyes didn't score in those drives, but he had a really nice long ball to Chris Olave that should have been caught on the sideline when he got absolutely walloped on that play. Ryan Day has preached toughness, 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 and I think that's what impressed me the most, is that for a guy who is a quarterback, and sometimes those guys get looked at as divas, right? Like, I didn't see him hang his head. I didn't see him get frustrated when they went those 6 drives in a row without scoring. I didn't see him shaking his head on the sideline or being upset about it. He's a guy that understands he can't get too high and he can't get too low, and that's one thing that Justin has always done well. And I think that's one thing that will serve him very well at Ohio State.
Yeah, we've heard this quite a few times the last couple of weeks with this Ohio State team. You never know how tough you are to get slapped in the mouth. Justin Fields got slapped in the mouth little bit with a couple of those hits. Now, before I let you go, you broke the news earlier this week. Ohio State, minor recruiting violation, so they're not going to be able to go full on during this first week of September.
Yeah, it's a really weird rule, number one. I mean,
You're telling me there's weird rules when it comes to recruiting?
Right, I mean, they're being punished because they put a name on an itinerary when the kid was on campus with his parents. So you're allowed to give him an itinerary for their visit and where they're supposed to be at what times, but you're not allowed to put their name on it for some reason. And then they sent photos that the kids take here. When they're on recruiting visits, they take photos in uniform and look all cool. And they sent photos of the kids' photo shoot to them, which is apparently not allowed. So, but to make that even weirder, The rule, which the punishment, which is the Buckeyes cannot text and call 2021 prospects, so current high school juniors. They can't call them now for another week when everybody else got to start on September 1st, but they can still talk to them if those players call them.
So you just got to call first.
So if you're being recruited by Ohio State and you want to talk to them, then you just need to call them
right now.
You just need to call them. So they can still talk to them. They just can't be the ones to initiate the contact for another week. Which, I mean, I don't know. It's all a crapshoot at this point.
All right, thank you very much, Jeremy Birmingham from LettermanRow.com. Don't forget to check out the website. Plenty of content on Ohio State, on recruiting. So much good stuff on LettermanRow.com.